Hello, I'm Andrea Gilligan and I'm joined here today with Kieran Cunningham, the CEO of RadioCentre Ireland, and also Gerard O'Neill, the chairperson of Amarach Research. Kieran, you might tell us about the role of RadioCentre Ireland first of all.
Yes, RadioCentre Ireland has formed all the independent radio stations, and RTE have come together for the first time to create this body, and it's all about promoting radio or audio as a brilliant advertising medium, really highlighting the strengths of it to advertisers. And the strengths of radio are incredible. Firstly, the huge audience that audio has. And what that allows advertisers is to reach their audience really, really quickly, because in Ireland, audio has an incredible audience compared to all other countries. Secondly, that audience has an incredible relationship with audio, with radio. It's that personal relationship that you have with audio that you don't have with any other media. So you think that a person listening to the radio is inviting the presenter into their home, into their car, into their daily lives, and it's a unique relationship, and that's really powerful for brands. And thirdly, and there's research to point this out, it's a hugely trusted medium. People, when they listen to the radio, they believe what is said. It's a trusted medium, and always has been. And those three attributes are really, really important because they really help drive the effectiveness of radio as an advertising medium. And it's not just me saying it, there is proof in the pudding. So there's been lots of mainly international research that has shown that brands that use radio enjoy short-term and long-term sales. And it's really about promoting that to advertisers and agencies in the Irish market.
So given, I suppose, the role of RadioCentre Ireland, what do you see as your goals, so your aims within the body?
Ultimately is to drive revenue for audio and radio in a highly competitive marketplace. The explosion of digital means advertisers have huge choices to make in how they spend their money. And ultimately the success of RadioCentre Ireland is to drive revenue to audio and radio in Ireland. And I think to do that, we have to do a few things. We've to, commission research, which we've started to do. We've to market the medium, and we have to put on events that really connect advertisers and agencies with the medium. I think there's three key things we're going to focus on in particular. One is return on investment. So in the UK, they've done a study which shows that for every £1 spent by an advertiser, on average, they get £7.70 return on investment for that £1 spent, which is an incredible return. Now, we don't have that research yet in Ireland, but I firmly believe if we did that research in Ireland, the results would be at least as good, probably better in Ireland, because radio is a particularly strong medium in Ireland. It's stronger as a medium compared to most of the countries in Europe. Secondly, creativity. It's a cliche maybe, but audio is the theatre of the mind. There's endless creative opportunities for advertisers and agencies. I think we need to focus on that and allow them to exploit the nature of audio, the nature of the limitless opportunities from a creative perspective, and the low entry cost in order to produce wonderful creative. And then thirdly, it's showcasing technology and the advances in technology, which is really exciting for advertisers today and into the future.
That love-loyalty relationship that Irish people have with radio, why do you think that is?
I think it's innate. We're a nation of storytellers, and I think people like talking, people like communicating. It's innately part of our culture. And the radio landscape is a bit different in Ireland versus other markets. It's more personality driven. I think that connection between the radio presenter in Ireland and the listener is enormous, and I just think it's part of who we are.
There's a real accessibility, I think, point as well to it, isn't there? For so many radio stations right across the country, there's a real local identity aspect to it as well.
There is, and I think radio in Ireland particularly plays on that really well. That platform of local identity is really important. In some other markets it's less so, it's more music driven, more formula driven, but in Ireland there's a great mix of stations that are music driven, but also stations that are based on local knowledge, local interest and local news stories. So, the connection between radio presenters and the Irish audience is ubiquitous throughout the country.
Yeah. You mentioned one of your goals within RadioCentre Ireland is the research aspect and commissioning research, and that's something that you've done.
Yes, we've just very recently commissioned Amarach to do some research. I think right at this time, as the pandemic restrictions ease, what are people's views in terms of, are they going to spend money? Are they going to go out and about? In relation to work, are people wanting to go back to the office? Do they want to stay at home? Then also what role radio plays within that, because people were working from home for lots of people for the best part of 2 years. And we know radio isn't a companion for people. So what role did radio play during the pandemic, and what impact is that going to have on people's listening habits into the future?
Okay. Gerard O'Neill from the chairperson of Amarach Research, also here with us on the panel today as well. Gerard, a couple of different aspects or key points within the research, but you might just take us through the, I suppose really the top headline figures to start.
Well, one of the things that we found, again, in terms of the timing of this research, is that consumers are now looking at ways of spending some of that money they've been accumulating during the pandemic. For 2 years, people have been saving extraordinary amounts of money, more than in other countries in Europe. And the forecasts really at the moment are that Irish consumers will spend over €100 billion in 2022, even with the uncertainty that's there at the moment with the political situation globally. And I think that means that we're going to see radio playing a critical part in influencing the spending decisions of people in the months and indeed years ahead. The big winner looks like eating out. I think people are glad to get out of their home after all. But they'll also be, I think, spending on fun. Holidays abroad, holidays at home, the flights that go with that, family occasions, get-togethers. All of that is coming through quite strongly in the research. Certainly, the majority of people are planning to do things differently with their money in the next months and over the next couple of years, fueled by the savings, but also just generally by the economic momentum that's there at the moment.
Yeah, we've had 2 years, Gerard, as well, of the living at home effectively, or certainly under some form of restrictive measures. And obviously in more recent months, we've had the easing of that now as we emerge out of the pandemic. You've been looking at the people who have gone back into the office, the number of people who want to stay at home, the number of people who'd like some sort of a mismatch as well of that too.
Well, what we found was that at the moment, about 1 in 4 adults are still working from home, some or all of the time. And of those people, actually the majority would like to continue with a little bit of flexibility. They don't mind going back to the office, maybe 2 or 3 days a week, but in fact most of them want to retain some of the benefits of working from home. Now I would stress it's 1 in 4 adults. It's not everybody is working from home. Some people have to show up and work in the front line. But for those that we surveyed throughout the country, they want to keep some of the benefits that they've enjoyed these past 2 years in terms of lifestyle, flexibility and so on.
Of course, that obviously, the more people being at home and you know, not having to get up and commute and leave their house on a daily basis, or certainly from their old routine, that obviously has an impact on how we listen to radio, when we listen to radio, how much radio we consume, the type of radio we're consuming. One of the things I thought was really interesting in the research was that there's more people listening to radio, but they're also listening to different types of radio, different options, and on different platforms as well.
I think this is one of the most interesting findings from the research, which is that for a significant cohort of listeners, all right, 9 in 10 people roughly listen to radio in one form or another, but for a significant proportion of those, their listening habits have changed because of COVID. They're not just because they're working from home, but they want to listen to different types of programs. Maybe they want something, a little bit of, you know, light relief, maybe from during the worst of the pandemic, the news that was coming through, or they just want to maybe check out different stations or different types of program formats. So I think what has happened is that we still have remained in love with radio as a people, but the type of radio we love is changing and shifting. And I think that's an interesting phenomenon, but also an interesting opportunity for advertisers as well.
Is it the consumption and how we consume the news, Gerard, or is it the company element for people when they are actually working at home?
One of the things that struck me about, particularly for people working from home, is the radio, for the majority of them, plays an important part of their working experience. So we were quite deliberate in the research. So you're working from home. Are you listening to the radio? And in fact, many of them are. And in fact, for those who are listening to the radio, it serves a number of purposes. The main one is it feels like they have company because they're not in the office with colleagues anymore. So just a little voice in the background, the chit chat that might go with that. Others say it kind of alleviates some of the stress of work and delivering. And a lot of people have been working maybe even harder, longer hours while working from home. And indeed, 1 in 5 say it actually makes them more productive. It's kind of like, some offices will have music on or will let people listen on their headphones. And there is definitely, for some people, more productivity from having the radio in the background. It just kind of lifts their mood and gets them working more, working better.
So when you look at the stats and the figures that you found, Jared, in terms of the number of people that will now be returning to the office, or maybe they've already made that transition, is the assumption then that the habits that we've noticed over the past 2 years, that will change or revert back to maybe previously how it was?
I think what's interesting is that what we're seeing in the research is that for a large minority of those who have been working from home and whose habits have changed, they're not going to go back to the way things were. They actually like the new listening habits, new listening lifestyles. What seems to come through is that part of the flexibility of working from home, maybe in the office 2 or 3 days, working from home the other days, means that they can also keep some of those listening habits that they've acquired. They may want to do other things, listening to podcasts, for example, but they nevertheless have acquired new habits. There's a finding from social psychology that it takes about 60 to 65 days for a habit to become something we're unconscious of. We just do it without thinking about it. Now, after 2 years, all those habits we've acquired are definitely something many of us are keeping and are now unconscious. We don't think about them. So I do think there will be changes. I think we will see further changes that will change the way people listen to radio and what they listen to. But overall, I think we've lived through a remarkable transition which will make radio a more salient channel for a lot of advertisers trying to reach Irish consumers and Irish workers.
Yeah. I'm thinking of that, Kieran, in the context of being an advertiser or a small business or a large business in listening or watching this today. What's your message, I suppose, to the companies and the advertisers? Like, if there is likely to be some element to change, what are you saying to businesses about the way they advertise, I suppose, on radio?
There's incredible opportunities. Radio offers, incredible platform to connect with your audience and connect with your audience maybe differently than you have done before, but still using the medium of audio to do so, because people are listening in huge numbers, but also listening in different ways. And also the change in technology really gives incredible opportunities for advertisers to do really innovative things with the medium and ultimately, connect with their customers and try and drive sales for their products and services.
You talked about the amount of money and the ways, I suppose, that people are willing to spend their money that they've now accumulated over the last 2 years in some cases. With kind of international world events that have obviously taken place over the past couple of weeks, is that likely to impact people's willingness to spend and their confidence to spend?
I think when you look at the more recent forecasts for Irish consumer spending, there's some modification of the outlook for the rest of this year. But in fact, we're still expecting to see growth of about 4 or 5% in consumer spending in 2022. That's coming off, first of all, less spending last year and the year before. So there's a bit of a catch-up spend going on. People are changing their car. People are catching up with relatives, going away on holidays. But we've also accumulated a great deal of savings. We've got the highest savings ratio in Europe. And that extra money will be used to add extensions to the house, maybe a deposit for a new house, maybe another car. All of that will translate into increased spending. So even at the moment, with the uncertainty that's out there, and it is significant, we can be pretty confident that consumers are going to be driving a considerable increase in spending in 2022, probably of an order of 5 to 6 billion euro more in 2022 than they spent in 2021. So that's a big cake for advertisers and others to be going after.
Just finally, Kieran, the emergence, I suppose, of other platforms and the way that we've seen from the research, the way in which people consume their audio or consume their radio and podcasts, technology obviously playing a massive, massive role in all of that. What will advertisers want to look at or focus on through the...
Yeah, technology gives huge opportunities for advertisers in terms of how they target. So I think the combination of live FM radio allows them to target huge amounts of the population very quickly, but also technology allows them to target in a more niche way, because the technology allows them to pick and decide particular audiences based on behaviour, based on interests, and target specific messages to those people in that way. And I think technology, I think radio is at a real moment in time in a really positive way. I think the amount of technology that's coming down the line is really, really highly innovative and really exciting. And I think it's real opportunity for advertisers to grasp the change in technology to benefit them, their brands and their customers.
Right. Well, we'll look forward to hearing more and seeing more about that as well over the coming weeks and months. For more information, of course, you can always get it too on RadioCentreIreland.ie. But the CEO of Radio Centre Ireland, Kieran Cunningham, and Gerard O'Neill, Chairperson of Amarach Research, thank you both for joining us here today.